Hello, everyone. Hi. Hi. We're a small group, but I'm glad to see you here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for navigating the traffic and other things of Cairo and being here at an early time, early for Cairo. Well, we're going to start with the community conversation now, and then we will not do it as long as we were going to do it. And because we're starting late, and then we, with our guest, who I will introduce in a second, then we'll segue into the workshop that I hope you're all going to be staying for as well. And I think some more people will be coming for the workshop. So let me just say first, for those of you who don't know me and don't know why we're here, maybe you're in the wrong room even. Okay. I'm Jim Ketterer. I'm the Dean of the School of Continuing Education. And this event is part of our Community Conversation series that is designed to be just what it sounds like. It's a conversation to take ideas, big interesting ideas with interesting people and bring them to the conversation and community level. This is not academic lecture. This is not something where somebody's going to stand at the podium and speak to everyone in lots of academic jargon. This is much more about having a conversation initially between the two of us and then opening it up to people here when you can ask questions of our guest. And we have other community conversations as well. I think we have one. This microphone's getting very hot. Could you turn down the mic a little bit, please? You can hear me okay without it. The community conversation, we're having another one in March, I think, or maybe one in February. I've lost track. But pay attention to our social media. We're always shamelessly plugging all the things that we do. Thank you. So, and these talks are on a wide variety of different topics. So tonight, we happen to be very, very honored to have with us someone who has traveled from the United States to be here in Egypt. It is her first time in Egypt. It's her first time in the region, and we're very happy that she can be experiencing Egypt and all of its many charms by being here at AUC and seeing the rest of the city and, in fact, rest of the country. So we have with us Kavya Krishna, who is the co-founder and CEO of the Society of Women Coders. She's a data engineer. She has a very interesting background that we're going to get into. Rather than a long introduction, I'm going to be asking her some questions, and we'll hear about her story and hear about her ideas and her work, and then we'll open it up to conversation with the rest of us. So welcome, Kavya. Happy to have you here. And why don't we just start the story at the beginning, which is really your story. What brings you to the work that you do, and what brings you to have been the co-founder of the Society of Women Coders, the CEO of it, and I'm always interested in people's stories, the pathway to where they are at the moment and where they're going. Maybe you could give everyone else a little sense of that.
Sure. Hello? All right, this one's working fine. First of all, thank you so much for that lovely introduction and for having me here. This is fantastic, and thank you so much for showing up to this conversation. To answer your question, how did it all start? So guys, I grew up in India. I moved to the United States to study computer science on a scholarship, which was a big leap for me, like you and I were discussing. I studied computer science from the US, got a degree in computer science, got my dream job in data engineering in New York City. I was living the life that I thought I dreamt and hoped, the thing I was chasing for so many years. But while I was at that job, while I was living it up in New York City, finally, I realized that there was a lack of sense of purpose there was something, that element that was missing. I grew up in a rural part of India. I come from a very different kind of a background. So I felt like I needed to give back. There was something that I needed to do to fill that gap from, starting from the bottom, coming there, and then I just felt like I had come really far from what I was and what I wanted to be. And hence, I started a travel group with a coworker at SiriusXM, the company, radio company where I was working as a data engineer in New York. We used to call ourselves Sisterhood of Traveling Coders at the time. And we would travel to different countries and set up boot camps for a week or so. And these would be coding camps for young girls because I was a coder and Farah Jean, my coworker from Haiti, was also a coder. So we'd go to these countries, set up these camps, and and collect a lot of data because we were both data engineers. So we would collect information on how these girls were responding to this material, what was the need. There's a serious lack of research when it comes to women in STEM, especially in developing countries and emerging economies. So we were doing a lot of that just because we were interested in it at the time. And that was a way for us to give back. So we'd use our vacation days, we'd use our savings to make these kind of trips happen. And it eventually became something that came, like a real organization and a real sort of a social impact venture.
Well, that makes me think of two different kinds of questions I want to ask you. So let me start first with the one that's more personal to your story, which is your decision, which sounds like it happened in steps, to leave the dream job and to do something different. I mean, I think for anybody, it's not easy to say, I've got that dream job and now I'm going to change. Now I'm going to do something different. I'm going to take a leap of faith. And because I think we can all learn something from those sorts of experiences that you went through. What kinds of decisions do you feel like you had to make? And what sort of resistance were you feeling to making those decisions, to take this leap of faith?
That's a great question. I don't think it was just one moment of, oh my God, I have to do this. It was very slow. I was doing, like I said, I was doing it part-time first. I had my full-time job. I would go 9 to 5. I'd come back home, try to make this happen during the weekends or during my breaks and during lunch. We'd have these little lunch hours, me and Farah. We'd talk about this stuff a lot. So it took a lot of time, really, to almost 5 years. I was in data science for 2 years, and then on the intersection of data science and finance for about 2 years at SiriusXM in New York. It took me about 5 years to come to the realization that my passion and my skills were better served serving the purpose and the mission of the Society of Women Coders. I felt like I was very replaceable at a big corporate job, and I didn't get that sense of that I was making a big difference, that I was doing something that was bringing change. And I got a lot more, I felt like my work at the Society of Women Coders was a lot more rewarding. So it was a very gradual process. The biggest challenge I had was the financial stability, right? Like you have this cushy job, you have a great bi-weekly paycheck coming in your way, and you're comfortable, and you have this amazing life that you thought was amazing. And then to take your mindset from there to come to a point where you're like, all right, I might have to take a huge pay cut. And I have responsibilities as a daughter, I have responsibilities as a sister. So, taking all of that into consideration was, I think I did a lot of work on myself, but it took me 5 years to come to this decision, so it wasn't like a snap. It happened over time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's enormously insightful for anyone who's considering making a change like that it can take quite a while to kind of, slowly take on some sense of reality, like, okay, what are all the implications of it? How could I do it? How can I put the pieces in place to really make it happen? But when you were then ready to actually make that change. And even in those steps up to it, you had really focused on coding for women. And so based on your own experience, having gone through that trajectory yourself, and then the boot camps you were doing around the world, what made you feel like, okay, there's a need that has to be addressed here? I mean, what were the obstacles you were seeing for women in the various parts of the world you were going to? Different cultures, different languages, different situations, yet there were certain commonalities, I assume. And what did you think that your organization could do to address those kinds of challenges?
That's a great question. I grew up in Rajasthan in India. So it is a very traditional and very patriarchal sort of a setup. So I kind of knew that I grew up in a family, in a community where women weren't financially independent inherently. It was a lot of, dependency on the men of the household for money, for, decisions. So I always felt like I wanted a life of choices. And that was my own mentality growing up, that I wanted to be financially independent so that I could have a life of choices. So when this whole idea came to us with doing coding for women, and even when I was in school, there were barely any girls at college who were studying computer science, who were studying STEM degrees, at least in the United States where I was studying. So I felt like there was sort of like a win-win situation there. There was a lot of demand in the market for tech workers, and there weren't enough women who were doing that, especially from emerging economies. So I felt like there was a win-win situation. Not a lot was being done at the time. There were organizations in North America that were promoting the same purpose, same mission, like Girls Who Code and Carly Kloss and a bunch of organizations that work in North America and Canada. But there weren't that many organizations or any missions really. This is in 2016, 2017, when that were doing work in emerging economies. So, so we started that. And then answering the second part of your question about commonalities, one thing I've realized is that women that age, we work with girls 14 to 16 years old. We teach them how to code. And girls that age have like severe self-esteem, self-confidence issues. And that is what prohibits them really getting into a degree like that or a career like that, or even the mindset of that they could be financially independent. So that is something that I've noticed around the world is very common between different countries and different cultures. And there's a lot of progress when it comes to the mindset. Like all over the world, women's movements is being, encouraged and supported for the most part. But still there's that lack of self-confidence, which is inhibiting a lot of this initiative.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, it's a deeper question too about like, well, what is the origins of this lack of self-confidence that you see as a commonality? I mean, that's one aspect of it. But then also, I'm thinking about the realities of like, well, the society, what do you think it brings to bear to this issue? Like what is the work kind of day in, day out that you're engaged in that can, for girls of that age, can give them both the knowledge that they need, but also the sense of self-confidence to go forward after they're done with your program and take it, to the next stages in their lives and in their careers?
So our process is like 3-step. First step is exposure, where you give them information, where you tell them this is what is out there. So there are a lot of sections of the society that we work with that don't have infrastructure access or don't have information access. So for people from that segment, we work on the exposure front a lot. Then the second metric is motivation. So the ones that have been exposed, how do you keep them motivated to pursue this further, and in a sustainable manner. And then the final one is retention. That after we've exposed them to these advanced courses and their introductory courses, 6 months or like a year after that, where are they? Are they still continuing and doing using STEM or using technology or using the digital literacy, digital skills workshops that they have been provided in their lives in any manner at all? So we try to kind of measure these three metrics through different surveys, through different forms and different ways to kind of understand how we can work better with different segments that we're trying to address.
So over the years you've been doing this now, you must, through this kind of monitoring and evaluation you're doing after the program, you must have developed some interesting statistics, and those statistics tell a story about what inspires somebody to keep at it, to be that third stage of retention, to really go forward and continue to do it. And where do you feel like there's been challenges where it hasn't worked? And that you, from the data that you collect through the post-program surveys, what have you said, like, maybe we need to adjust this, or we need to adjust this because this is causing people to kind of stop continuing to go forward in this path?
Yeah, so the things that have worked, I'll answer that first. Mentorship works. So generally, if from exposure to motivation, there's like a 50% dropout, right? We have, let's say we start with 100 girls who've been exposed to something, and then when we come to the second stage, we've lost 50 of them. That could be interest, that could be, they don't have access, they don't have infrastructure, they don't have the motivation or whatever. The next thing is, if we offer mentorship alongside exposure, that goes up by like an additional 15% based on what we've done, like at Society of Women Coders. So mentorship has worked. If you give them a mentor in the initial stages, someone they're comfortable with, someone they can ask questions to, someone they can be, I would say a little informal with, not just, not someone like a teacher, someone like a TA sort of, someone you can go to after hours to and ask questions. That really helps with motivation as well as retention. So that has definitely worked. Challenges that we face is, I would say, because we work with minors, we work with girls, we not only have to convince them, we have to convince their parents. So we have to do like a lot of information sessions, which we realized very late into our work. After 2 years of our work, we realized that a lot of our work has got to do with the parents, because you want the parents to be just as informed. You want them to be a part of this process, because at the end of the day, they are minors, right? So their decisions are really not being taken by them. It's being taken by their parents. So convincing the parents of the girls that this is great for their girl, or this is something that she should be doing, is just hosting information sessions has helped now, but initially it was a huge challenge that we faced.
Yeah, I mean, because my experience in talking to parents about a variety of issues that have to do with where someone might go to university, what they might study, is that parents often have very, very specific ideas what their children should be doing. And, different parents have different styles in sending that message. Some of them are very explicit, like, you will do this, you will major in this, and full stop. Some of them are less obvious, but the messages still can be quite strong. And, when somebody's 14 or 16 years old, that's hard to overcome. But so I think speaking to the parents, I can imagine, is really essential at that point. But I want to go back to this question of mentorship too, because I personally have been fortunate in my life to have people who have supported me, and it's not like I sought them out in a very kind of transactional way, like, oh, I need a mentor to help me do X or Y. I just happened to come across them. I was just fortunate. And they have turned out to be great mentors in my career and perhaps in my life more broadly, a much more holistic view of mentorship. And it's not only helped me make decisions about what to do, but it's also inspired me to want to help others too, and to make the transition from being a mentee to being a mentor. So I'm sure that as you do your work, there are many of these girls who are in your programs who are looking at your example, the path you've taken, the choices you've made, and even if they're not saying to you, I want you to be my mentor, they're looking to you in that direction. So maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the people you feel who have mentored you, and then what it feels like to then make that transition to be someone else's mentor.
I love answering that question all the time. So we have this, first I'll answer the second part of it, where we mentor girls. We have this program, it's an ambassador program, where we take our alumni and they become ambassadors of the mission, where they take the mission forward within their communities. So we train them in like a 10-week format where we provide them with leadership training with us, and then they take the same classes that they've learned from us further down in their school, in their communities, wherever they want to take it forward to. So I'll give an example of one of the girls. Her name is Feruza, and she's from Uzbekistan. She was a student with us at one of our programs called Coding Without Borders. So this was in 2020, and she was in high school at the time. She was brilliant at the program. She stayed through the mentorship. She became an ambassador. She interviewed, and she did the ambassador program with us. Took it forward in her city, in Tashkent, and she hosted this class of a camp for like 20 girls for 6 months in her city. And then she used the work experience she got from there and a recommendation letter from us to get an admit and a full scholarship from Princeton with a degree in computer science. So
that worked pretty well.
Yes. So, it is a model that has worked out really well. So she is sort of a mentee that came from this program. I come from a technical background, right? Like I did computer science in school. A lot of my friends are working at big tech companies, Apple, Google, and all these different companies in the Bay Area and in New York. And they come forward as mentors and mentor these girls. So, so for them, it is an opportunity that they can make a lot out of. And on the other hand, when you said the mentors I've had in my life, so I think we were talking about this before as well. I feel like there are two kinds of people. One is you have a mentor, and another is a sponsor. And I feel like a sponsor is also a mentor, but the sponsor is the kind of mentor that everybody should have in their lives. These are the people that will take your name in rooms that you will never have access to, right? Like I have two wonderful women on my board at the Society of Women Coders. Their names are Shruta and Colleen, and they're both, one person is a businesswoman and the other one is academic. And they're both have been my mentors and sponsors at the same time, bringing opportunities for the mission, bringing people, bringing media, bringing all these different kinds of things for our mission to grow and evolve. And if it wasn't for them, then the mission and my personal journey also wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah, and that makes me also think that I think it's something worth seeking to have a mentor and a sponsor, ideally, but it can't be forced either. And that's what the tricky thing is about it. And I think when people try to over-engineer it and to force it, it becomes highly transactional and not that effective. I mean, maybe somebody feels sort of cornered, will you be my mentor? You must be my mentor. Will you do X, Y, and Z for me? And that tends not to be so productive. I think people, will be polite in response to something like that, but it's really kind of developing a relationship over time, in my experience, and it sounds like this is your experience as well. And so, when I'm talking to someone who I think will actually listen to me about this, and I would say to them, when you identify somebody like this in your life, don't push it. Don't be pushy. don't be asking too much too soon. Let the relationship develop over time and see where it goes. And because, whoever one chooses to say, oh, I want them to be my mentor, they also have lives. They're busy people. They have families. They have their work. They have many other things. And so I think there's it sounds like in your work, when you're dealing with girls, you're also, maybe just by modeling it, you're also kind of teaching them about how to be the right kind of mentee, and then at some point in their lives, hopefully be the right kind of mentor.
I feel like so this is a hard lesson that someone learns in their journey, but I'm very scrappy like that. So I feel like I have been kind of pushy with my mentors a little bit in the beginning to be absolutely
You didn't follow
honest.
my advice.
No, I am actually, I come from a kind of a setup where I'm like, if I'm not trying hard enough, then maybe I'm not doing enough, right? So I am very scrappy with that. So I've had those times where I've been that pushy mentee that you're talking about. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Some people are impressed by you being so scrappy and by you wanting something so much. And sometimes you're just like, they just shun you out and you don't get any more conversations with them. So it's sort of like a numbers game, if you will. it's something that, but I feel like a real relationship though only happens over time. Even if you've been scrappy or pushy with someone in the beginning, if you don't give them that time to see you for who you really are, then you would never get to like a long-lasting, long-term relationship, in my opinion. But yeah, I've been scrappy at times. So. Sorry? Exactly.
Yeah, and as you were talking about it too, I was just wondering like how much of it might be, everybody's been brought up in different places, different cultures, different ways of interacting that are inculcated in the way that they present themselves to the world. And so, what might be pushy in one culture is just normal conversation in another culture. And what might be considered, too forward and rude in one place is just a normal conversation somewhere else. And so in this highly connected, globalized world, it's hard to, I think, kind of also start to figure out what works where, with whom, what background, and whatever. I'm just, we didn't talk about this before, but it's just coming to mind. This is truly a conversation.
Yeah, I feel like that's got to do a lot with the culture you're working in and the culture you're from. I grew up in India, so I come from a very competitive sort of a culture. I feel like for every little thing you're fighting, and for one seat there are millions of people that are trying to get to that one thing. So I come from that culture where I feel like being scrappy has worked for me. But when you move to the States, it's very different.
I'm from the northeastern United States, which is very repressed. We're supposed to be very quiet, make it seem like you're not trying too hard. Even if you're trying very hard, you're not supposed to make it look like you're trying that hard, because that's not cool. And do you agree? Because you moved to the northeastern United States.
100%, yes.
Yeah, and that I think must be hard to decode as well, if I may use that language,
100%.
to figure out what's going on here in this culture.
Yeah.
And which I have to say, just about my own country, it's different in that part of the United States than it might be in Texas or somewhere else. It's a big country, and like Egypt, people have different sort of subcultures in different parts of the country. Well, we could spend a lot of time on mentoring, but maybe not the whole talk. So let me move on to something else too while we have access to your insights and experience. And one of them is about coding. You are a computer scientist, but what would you say, given your experience in working with lots of different kinds of people, the advantages are of learning coding even if one is not going to become a computer scientist? What if someone's going to be a musician or a historian or what path they might follow? Are there advantages, and what are they to learning coding?
Yes, there are a lot of advantages to learning how to code. And in my opinion, everybody should learn how to code a little bit because 90% of the jobs in this world need some kind of a digital component now. And even though like most tools out there are drag and drop, if you know what's going on in the background, you know, suddenly become the 1% in the industry that you're trying to be, which is a great spot to be at, and it gives you that extra edge in your own career, in your own growth graph. So I feel like you said, like a musician, people do all kinds of stuff with code. They can, you know, create all different kinds of like combinations with music, and even the website development, right? Like there are so many drag and drop tools, like people use Wix and WordPress and whatnot. But if you really know how to code in JavaScript and Node.js, then you can really customize your template, and you can really do, you know, become that 1% of amazing website developers. So yeah, it's 100% important to like learn how to code a little bit.
I suspected that would be your answer. I just had a feeling.
Not a surprise.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask one last question, and then let's open it up to the group to ask their own questions. But there is, even in the past month, a lot of media coverage of AI. And, you know, in academic institutions, there's lots of people who are in an absolute panic over the ability for artificial intelligence to write term papers, you know, in seconds that would supposed to take somebody an entire semester to do, or to do all kinds of things. And there is there's some sense of panic, even just beyond. So we're in an academic institution, so I happen to know that there's a lot of panic going on. But not just in academia, there's a sense that, like, wait a second, are things getting kind of out of control? Are we losing the ability for humans to really kind of be in control of where this technology is going? And, you know, it's a hot news story. But, you know, you're an expert in this. You know much more about it, certainly, than I do. As you see this media coverage of this issue, what's your take on it, and what do you think that we should be thinking about as this technology goes forward?
Okay, so disclaimer, this is just my opinion and only my opinion. I call it like the ChatGPT paranoia, or the OpenAI paranoia, kind of. I feel like people are freaking out more than they need to, because it is definitely a transformational tool. It's a revolutionary tool, but I feel like people are going to just have to learn how to use that in their profession, and not instantly. I mean, maybe it'll replace sales jobs a little bit, or maybe it'll replace like the chatbots that we've had a little bit. But I don't think we need to freak out about the use of ChatGPT just yet. And I feel like it's a tool that we need to learn how to use to our advantage more than anything else.
That's always good advice. Don't freak out.
Yeah, don't freak out.
But the second part of your advice is learn, which is what you were saying about coding too. Like, learn what's going on, learn how to use this tool, whether you like it or not, whether any of us like it or not. It's just a reality. It's a new reality that's going to continue to develop beyond and beyond and beyond. And so we need to learn about it. We need to not freak out, take a deep breath, and figure out what's going on here and how it can be applicable in lots of different ways. Okay, with that, maybe we can have some questions from the audience. And I think maybe if you just speak up, because there's not that many of us, and we can hear you. Thank you.
Yes. You choosing a mentor. Like, I mean, you can't really just choose someone, but I feel like the first conversation you have, you can definitely drop them an email asking them, But you need to have a chart, like a path charted out. You can't just be like, be my mentor and then leave it at that. How I did it was I had very clear goals that this is what I want and this is how I feel, you know, a conversation between the two of us might help us to go forward in that direction. So yeah, just like a nice gentle email or a cold email can go a long way. Yes.
What do you think as a beginner? Where can I start? From where can I start? Or what exactly could be required for me in order to support me on my human resources in this question? And let me ask the second question as well. My son is 13 years old, so to prepare him for the future career and having more accomplishments on his future goals, I definitely can start preparing him instantly. So how can I start with him?
So to the first question about HR, so I'm not an expert on HR, but I feel for people in HR, people is currency, right? Like your network is everything. So I would focus on just building that because I don't think an AI can build a network or a network of people or engagements or community. There might be a lot of tools that are being used by HR. Like there are a lot of platforms, like I know of one, it's called Mogul, which is being used in the United States by a lot of companies to post jobs and to post like different things. So maybe knowing how those platforms work or how you can be the one that, you know, has that additional skill set of not just like building or just like knowing the background of an HR platform could really help you in your career growth, but I'm not really an expert on like the HR side of things. For your son, I think learn how to code would be a great place to start. And you know, there are so many amazing boot camps out there. Just like getting started with any of those, like the 16-week or the 20-week ones, especially the free ones, would be a great place to like get started with like learning how technology is evolving and to stay updated. So I feel like a bootcamp might be a great idea for him. Thank you. I hope I was helpful. That's all right. Great.
Ragda?
Thank you so much for this talk. I also had multiple questions. I think the discussion was very relatable, and so it brought up several ideas. I classify myself as like a humanities student, and so sometimes I feel like those who study other sciences and other topics are missing something that I find really valuable in humanities. Can you tell us what we're missing as non-coders, non-data scientists? Is there a perspective that you gain from having that understanding?
I just feel you get a lot more comfortable with these kind of conversations, right? If you wouldn't be afraid or scared to, like, I'll give you an example of my mother. She is, like, she can't code, obviously, but she's also, like, not very digitally, like, fluent. Like, she'll do her WhatsApp, yes, but, like, she's not, like, if I ask her to book something, she's still very scared. She has that fear that, oh my God, how do I really go about booking something? I might get scammed or whatnot, right? While someone who knows and understands how these systems are working wouldn't be as scared of using those systems. So it gives you that comfort of just even asking questions. Like my mom would never ask because she's just so scared that she might sound stupid or she might not be, you know, the most, like someone will think that she doesn't know enough. So I feel knowledge gives you, any kind of knowledge gives you that comfort to just ask more or to become more curious about what you're doing.
That's a good point. And on that note, is there any such thing as coding for non-coders? Like, as somebody that's not past undergraduate, like I've already had my career and all of that, what can I do at this stage to have a little understanding about technology and coding in specific? I feel like it's like the language. Obviously, it's the language, yeah.
So many things out there. And considering you both are kind of like wanting to start somewhere with coding, I'll drop my email and I'll send you guys resources. There are a bunch of boot camps out there for non-coders. You can just start with something as small as a 6-week after work kind of a program. And there are free resources as well. If you're really interested, because this will take some work, you can do like 3 hours a week for 6 weeks and get a little bit of an idea of what coding is all about, and even have like a project of your own on your portfolio. We do this for our girls all the time, but I will be more than happy to provide you some resources.
I would also just say too that you identified as a humanities person. So I don't know the extent to which, and maybe it's happening at AUC and I'm just not familiar enough with it, but I do know that at universities in the States and in Europe, that one of the big trends in humanities is digital humanities, and that there's a lot of foundations who are supporting this, and a lot of people who are coming out of PhD programs are coming out of a training where they sort of like traditional humanities training, but then at least a certain amount of what Kavya is talking about too, that those people are really a hot commodity in the academic job market, and digital humanities is a pretty big trend. I just comes to mind because you mentioned the humanities.
That sounds really interesting. Maybe I'll start there. And then my last question is, I sort of had my bubble burst when somebody was explaining to me that there's this common perception that technologies are not biased, they're neutral and all of that, but at the end of the day, a human writes that code and has their own sort of biases as they're designing that whatever program, AI or platform or et cetera. To your mission of bringing women into this space, do you see a more impact, or can you speak to the impact that is beyond X number of women are now coders? What does that translate to? What does bringing women into the coding space do?
When you said about bias, are you talking about the bias that exists within the coding world, or the bias that the technologies, the way they've been constructed, have within them, the systems, or are you talking about the bias that exists as a society? Which kind of bias are you trying to address?
I think what this person was trying to point out is that sometimes people, if you're doing a test online or something, you may think it's more systematic or less. I don't know how to make my point, but I think the biases in systems and in societies can translate into the biases in technologies because they're built by individuals.
Yes. Traditionally, because there weren't that many men building these systems, yes, these systems are very biased and are not made for women. So bringing more women into these systems, especially one of the cases is health tech, right? Like Apple has this health app, right? Traditionally, it was designed, built, structured, everything mostly by men or men coders, and bringing more women into health tech or Apple Health has helped them create services that are specifically targeted for women's health, like women's reproductive health, women's, different things that are very targeted and specific to women, and that is something that wasn't there like 10 years ago, which is such a shock and such a surprise to like everybody. So that's a great, great point, and I'm glad you brought it up, that there is a lot of biases that exist within the system, and having more women as coders, as designers, as technologists is definitely going to help bridge that gap.
Those are great questions. Does anyone else have any questions? Yes, we have someone back here. Great.
I just want to ask about what's the main skill the girl in your program should know or learn?
You mean like coding-wise?
Okay, beside coding, do you work with their character or building something in their knowledge, to...
Yeah, so we work with like their confidence. So we do like public speaking also, we do leadership also, but we also do like our main curriculum is around coding. So we teach them like the basics of how to build a website or how to design, a social impact venture, how to speak up about it, how to not be afraid. So it is definitely a character development also, but coding is at the core of it. Thank you.
I think as you were talking, I was thinking that, the public speaking and the other parts of it, I can see those being important. But it sounds like what really is the most confidence-building aspect of what they do with you is the mastery of something. That they say, I can do this. Now I can understand this, and I can actually do this. And it's, I think it gets to the heart of, well, what is confidence? What is self-esteem? Is it just like, oh, I want to make you feel good about yourself by saying you can do it, or actually giving you the tools to show yourself you can do it. You can learn this and you can do it, and that will give you, do you see what I mean? There's two different ways that people think about self-confidence, and I think the way that you're going about it, which is based on mastery of a technical skill, is the one that's most sustainable and has the deepest kind of impact. Does that make sense?
Yes. There are two kinds of ways usually how I feel missions work. Ours is not a preach mission. Like, we're not going in there telling that your life is horrible, this is how you should live your life, right? They're already living there. We're going and saying, if you don't have this opportunity, we can help you with this opportunity. So they already need to be at that level where they're like, I want to be able to do this. At least the first step, which is initiative, has to be there. And then, we help them get from where they are to a more confident, a whole individual in all these different perspectives and skill sets.
Great. Did we have another question?
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you for this valuable talk. Second, I want to ask you, as you went through a kind of a career shift, how could you deal with your community's objection about that? As my mom always said, you studied in that field, and after all this time, as simple, you go through a career shift, and I don't know how to convince it. So how would you deal with that?
That's a great question. It's a little bit personal also. I feel like I had my own savings and own money to fall back on when I made this career shift. So when my parents had this, they were worried that, you have this amazing, cushy, nice job. Why, when you give that up and start a new business, sort of, like you're starting a new thing, which is not going to be able to make as much money because it is a nonprofit and it's not, an engineering job, how are you going to be able to afford a life in New York City? What are you going to do? So I was smart about it. I did a bunch of investments. I did a lot of things to make sure that I can still live a life that I was doing and still pursue my passion at the same time. Culturally, I feel like I've been very fortunate to be able to convince people around me of that I can do it, and constantly being able to show results and constantly being able to convince them through those results has been the key in still being able to do it with all my heart.
My second question is, how would you deal with any women who want to start up a business for their own, and they have always challenges to do so.
Like, what do I have, like, what do I tell them? Be smart. Don't be, I mean, it's good to be motivated, but be very smart. Like, everybody wants to be successful, and success speaks for itself. So when you fail, you should be smart enough to understand that that is a possibility that you can fail. So you should have, a path charted out for you if you fail. But that shouldn't stop you from taking risks and really going for what you want to do. So yeah, be smart. Just try to deal with it in a more organized and defined way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great questions.
What my question is, might be a little bit silly. What would make an ideal learner of coding? In another way, some people are good with languages, but they're not so good with mathematics. So I would imagine coding might require a certain knowledge or a talent with mathematics, since you're a computer scientist. So, so what do you think would?
So it depends on what kind of coding you're pursuing. You can learn how to code without a background in mathematics, but you cannot become like a quantitative scientist or a data scientist without knowing economics and mathematics. You can still become a website developer. You can still become a product designer. You can still become a lot of those things without a very solid background. And then while you're learning how to code, you can build those mathematics skills on the side if you're really into it. So,
are there some prerequisites you would recommend someone to?
There are a lot of depending on what exactly you're going for. Let's say you just want to learn how to build an app. Yeah. If you just want to know how to build an app, I don't think you need to have a solid background in math. Yeah. I don't think so. There are enough tools out there where you can just learn the basics and learn just Python to begin with and build an app.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to add something to this, though, because I think you've raised a very interesting thing, and I'm just fascinated by the difference in the use of language between the two of you. So you said a talent for mathematics or a talent for languages, and you said a background in it. And to my mind, those are two different things. And the reason I say that is, so my father was a music educator for his whole career and a musician. And at the end of his career, he was really firmly convinced, and this is a musician where often the word talent would be used. He said, there's no such thing as talent. There's just work. If people decide they want to do mathematics or music or languages or whatever, and their lives are they're not otherwise, in a catastrophe situation in their lives, they can do it. What happens is that when people use the word talent, I'm not giving you a hard time, it's a really fascinating conversation, I think, but it does two things. Number one, if you see somebody who came up here and played, some Mozart on the piano, and someone might say, oh, they're really talented, it says two things. One, well, I'm not talented, I couldn't play Mozart on the piano. And two, and that's not true, I would say. That's what my father would say. If you worked at it, you could. Secondly, it actually undermines how much that person has worked who's playing it's not that they were born playing Mozart. It's they worked very, very hard to do it. And so, it's, again, I'm not trying to give you a hard time,
no,
but it's just,
I
I think it's a really fascinating way. And to hear the two of you use different words about it, background is one thing, you can develop a background. Talent, we tend to think of as this is just from up above and you either have it or you don't. And that's what my father was saying, it's not true. You can have it if you want it.
Thank you very much, sir.
I just want to know if you do you intend to do that coding program for Egyptian women here in Egypt?
Yes, we are already working with girls in Egypt.
Okay.
But
There is age and limited age in it?
Yes,
Or
we work with 14 to 16 years old.
to
That's
for
14 years to 16 years,
Okay.
high schoolers.
okay.
The organization, Society of Women Coders, we've started working with some rural areas or some areas that are like on the suburban side of it. Like we have a program in Mansoura, and we are trying to get another program set in somewhere, I'm forgetting the name of that place. So basically like some of these kind of programs which are not really centered in Cairo, but like
Yeah.
spread out a little bit out on the outskirts.
Great.
But yeah, the whole point of me also being in Egypt
Yeah,
is also to understand and learn
Great.
how we can better
Thank
serve.
you. Thanks.
I would also say, and we don't know where it's going to go, but I'm hoping that we can work together and that.
Yes.
So,
Being
like
scrappy is already helping.
exactly, and I'm being scrappy now. I'm being pushy on stage and saying we should work together. But this, I think gets to the point too that there was at least a couple questions about, well, where does one start? Whether one is 13 or you're the mother of a 13-year-old, how do you dive into this and learn something about it to whatever extent you want it to be applicable to your lives? And just for a scrappy, shameless plug about our school, this is why the School of Continuing Education exists. We want to present programs that are new and responsive to what people are interested in and be available to people of all backgrounds and all ages and for all reasons. Some people will want to do it because they want to become a computer scientist. Other people will do it because they want to just learn about it for their own reasons, whatever they might be. And so I'm very much hoping that we can find a way to work with Kavya and present some things to Egypt as well, in addition to what you're already doing.
Thank you so much.
Okay, yes, please.
You said your program is to girls from 14 to 16 years old. How about all the girls like us? Because I suffer from this problem of public speaking. I work in the field of mentoring and teaching. I'm a teacher and teacher educator. And when I started my career in this field, I used to be in a training when they told me that I have to stand in front of my colleagues and be a trainer. I started to cry every day in the break for the whole training because I have this feeling that I'm not able to stand in public. And after 5 years of being in the field, of working with myself, I have this great progress on myself, but I still have this, I still think I need more. I need to work, and this is the only thing standing in front of my way, because I have everything. I'm prepared very well, and when I stand in front of the people, my mind started to be blocked. Yeah. In fact, when I just put this mic, my heart is What are the steps? What are the routine for us grown women need to work on in order to be able to overcome this feeling?
So I have a great story for you. So first thing, there are a lot of programs out there for women, older women that are trying to do this. We are on a separate mission. We want more girls to have those skills early on so that they don't feel that way. And that is really inspired from a very personal story that I have. I used to be extremely shy. I could not raise my hand in a class. I could not say anything to anybody. I was in class at UMass Amherst, in Massachusetts, and I would sit in the front seat, but I would never say a word, never ask a question. I'd go to the TA sessions after and very quietly write down my question and show it to the TA because I was so scared. I was also scared of my accent because I was from India and I was in the US and I was already very scared about that. But I used to be extremely shy. So I decided to work on myself slowly and learn how to speak in public and join, you are going to these different places and working. Similarly, I started going to Toastmasters and doing public speaking stuff within my school, within my college. And one thing that I'm extremely proud about is like I did a TED Talk like 2 years ago. So from there, where I was writing down on a sheet of paper and telling my TA that to answer my question, to actually speaking on one of the biggest platforms of public speaking platforms in the world, took a lot of effort and energy and work. But if I had that early on in my life, when I was 13 or 14, and I was still being able to give these pitches and speak in public, then maybe my journey would have been a lot less difficult than it was, you know? So that's kind of like the whole inspiration, that how I see it behind wanting to teach girls early on to stand up and speak and be, not be shy and submissive like we were taught to it in some cultures, but just be very, you know, open about what they want and graceful and respectful of everything around. Yeah. Yes.
So what do you do to motivate yourself when you feel down? Yeah. Please, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure you will face a lot of challenges. So what do you do to motivate yourself? Yeah, like an advice or something.
I speak to my family. I feel like that helps a lot. I do yoga. That helps a lot.
Yeah, nice. Do you have a certain routine to do every day in order to be in the same, you know, mood? Like, for sure you are exerting lots of efforts.
Are you asking me how I motivate myself? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, and for sure, if you have a healthy routine to share with us, you know, something to do.
I do yoga, like I said. I say yes more than I say no to things that I want to do and try and experience, and I try to just like practice gratitude for what I have and what I want in life.
You know what I think is one of the most motivating things too, for anybody, I'm not just speaking for myself, is when one is told they can't do something, or when one is told that that idea will never work or something. The world is filled, unfortunately, with negative people. The world is filled with people who love to give advice that has more to do about themselves than it does about you and supporting you, and you know, people who are not mentors or sponsors or whatever. They're you know, just they're existing in their own negative world. And so that can be very inspiring, actually, to be kind of underestimated, undervalued. And there's an expression in English: success is the best revenge. And I think that, you know, that doesn't mean you have to be in their face about it. You just simply succeed, and it speaks volumes. How's that?
Great.
Well, I think that's okay. Do we have time for one more? Yeah, please. Thank you. Please.
Thank you so much for your insightful talking, actually. I really appreciate it. And I want to ask you about, actually, I'm trying to enter clinical research field and as a clinical data manager. And I want to know what kind of programming language should I have a basic ground, basic foundation, because I have basic foundation of R and SQL, but I want to know more, and I feel like I'm overwhelmed with everything right now.
Because I was in data, I feel if you have a very solid understanding of SQL, you will go places. Just like you already know R and SQL, that's great. I would also learn cloud and AWS a little bit.
What, sorry?
Amazon cloud. I would also learn a little bit of Spark. If you can get an understanding of Hadoop. It's not used anymore, but just like to understand what those nodes were, that would be also a great tool to have. But you know SQL, and just to have a very solid hold on SQL, just like become an expert in it, like become the 1%, you know, where you're like the best in that, and you're set. you don't need to feel overwhelmed with like everything else if you have a very, very strong hold of SQL.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I think this part of the evening is coming to an end. I just want to say before we end the community talk that this is exactly the kind of conversation that I hoped that we all could have in a community conversation. That this is truly a conversation, lots of really fantastic questions, from very technical to the motivational to the humanities and the 13-year-old son and talent and everything else. I mean, it really, you know, this is the kind of conversation one would hope to have over coffee or what have you, and here we are in this beautiful Oriental Hall. So thank you to our wonderful guests, but to all of you as well. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Now, let me also ask, because this is a two-part event, and the numbers are not big here, how many people are thinking that they would be here for the workshop? Just raise your hand if you... The workshop that's about to happen. I'm sorry, what did you say? You registered for the workshop, right? Oh, well, assume it's not full. If you could stay, would you stay for the workshop? How many people, whether you registered or not, how many people want to stay for the workshop? Yeah, so the reason I'm asking this is that it would require to do the workshop. I don't, and jump in if I'm saying the wrong thing here, but I think we might actually ask Kavya to be able to send you some things online, because I don't think we have enough time, because everything started late, and I don't think we have enough people to do it in the right way that would be beneficial for all of you and for our guests. Is that accurate?
That's great. Yeah.
And so what we would like to offer is that we would give you the information from Kavya that would allow you to participate in some other way and be in touch with her and her organization, but have this be actually, so not have the specific workshop. But correct me if I'm speaking out of line here.
That's right. The workshop is actually a 2-hour intensive kind of a thing. So we would need like the right kind of setup, the right kind of time and engagement.
And we're also having some technical issues.
Yeah, so
that's
it's
not
best
working.
we do it online maybe in the future or something.
Well, Kavya's leaving, unfortunately. Yeah. But we want her to come back to Egypt right away. Yes.
I'll try my best.
Yes.
I'll try my best.
You want to, so, well, all right, so one thing we can do, though, is we can have a group photo with everybody here.
Yes.
Does that work?
Yes.
It's a different kind of workshop, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Before we do that, I just wanted to thank all of you. Thank you so much for staying through this and this amazing questions. I had a great time. This was sort of a last-minute kind of a thing. Thank you so much for organizing and managing your team. Thank you so much, everybody. This is the first time I'm in Egypt and first time I'm doing an event. So this is really special, and I'm just really happy that all of you are a part of it. And I just can't wait to do more and more things at AUC and, you know, get involved as much as I can.
We look forward to that. And for the record, I can't recall any time, including now, that you were pushy or anything. You were just very pleasant. So this worked out very, very nicely. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.